Our next speaker is another Florida Gator, sorry. Andy Raum received his Juris Doctor from the University of Baltimore and his Master's of Forensic Sciences from the George Washington University. So he has a keen interest in forensic science. He was admitted to the practice of law in the Court of Appeals of Maryland, the U.S. District Court for Maryland, the Fourth Circuit Court of Appeals for the U.S. government, and the U.S. Court of Military Appeals and the U.S. Supreme Court. You've done a lot in the last 4 decades, I guess. And more recently, he works in Gainesville at the University of Florida, and he produces and lectures a 30-hour Florida Bar Association certified CLE online program in forensic science, which he developed and is administered by UF for lawyers who need to know about forensic science. So, Andy.
Thank you. Oh, my time's up. I got 5 minutes. Oh, gosh. Now I've got a mind block. Now, I got involved in this case because, oddly enough, my brother-in-law and I were watching a Gator football game in the fall of 2008 in my family room. And during the halftime or something, the news came on. They said they've sent portions of the trunk of this car to the FBI lab and also some to the University of Tennessee. And I turned to my brother-in-law and I said, oh my God, and I said, there's only one person in the country that I know is doing that work, and it's Arpad Vass. Because he was publishing in the Journal of Forensic Sciences, which as a member of the Academy, I get. So I was aware of what he was doing. I said, it's Arpad Vass. And he says, I've never heard of him. I said, well, if this case goes to trial, you will. This is great stuff. And then I contacted Jeff and I said, you know, I'd like to help you get this admitted in evidence. I want to be under the radar. I was in the courtroom a lot, but you don't see me because I was out of the camera range. I didn't want my name published. I did this because I believe in the science, and I wanted to get it in. So that's what I contributed, and I worked extensively with the witnesses, Arpad and the chemist and the physicist. There's a funny story about that too, with the LIBS, laser-induced breakdown spectroscopy, that was used to analyze the controls. Because at the deposition in Knoxville, she was asked if it really works, and she says, well, I hope so. It's what they're using on the Mars rover to analyze the surface contents. We think it works, you know. But as a part of that process, I had to self-educate myself on LIBS. So I got these textbooks, and I pondered through these things. Fortunately, I'd had some experience with gas chromatography, mass spectroscopy. So I just had to bring myself back up to speed on it. So my function here was to work with the experts to get them in a position to be ready to testify so that they could present their evidence coherently and in a fashion that would assist the court. I couldn't tell them what to say, but I could tell them basically what they had to cover and how to present it. And also bring them up to speed on what the law is, so that they knew where the whole thing fit in. And that is really what my function is. And that's what I do now. I teach lawyers about the forensic sciences, because they need to know it. Like Jeff says, you don't have to be an expert, but you do have to know enough about it to understand the process, because the lawyers here have to work with their expert witnesses. It's a team effort. It's not two different people. It's a team effort that has to come together and work for this presentation. And I say the lawyers are the directors for this play, and the forensic scientists are the actors. They're actually making the presentation, but we're sort of setting up the scene and the stage and doing all the character positioning. We have to know basically what these people are talking about for a couple of reasons, really. Number one, what happens if these witnesses get in trouble on cross-examination? we have to know enough to be able to rehabilitate them on redirect examination. We also have to know enough to cross-examine the other side's witnesses. So there's a lot of learning involved in these processes. Fortunately, there's usually enough time in a high-profile case to do that. And in this case, working with the witnesses, and well, we got the evidence in that we wanted to, except for the can. Anyhow, that's another story. It's still there, percolating away in the sheriff's evidence rooms. Someday they'll put it in the Smithsonian or something. But it's still there, and it still smells. There's a small piece of Kaylee Anthony in that can. What's left of her is in that can, ladies and gentlemen. That's a sobering thought, if you think about it in that context. Anyhow, I like to talk about the sense of smell, and ironically, there is an article in this month's edition of Scientific American Mind, and you wouldn't believe all the eclectic magazines I get, it drives my wife nuts, about the sense of smell and how it works and how it triggers memories and all this other kind and associations. And it reminds me of what I tell them about the Proustian moment. Emil Proust wrote Things Remembered. And it's kind of like that you're walking along and suddenly, especially for the men, you smell that perfume. Oh gosh, instantly you're 25 years back in that special night and you remember every detail of it. Well, your sense of smell is that acute, okay? You're gonna recognize that special smell over anything else. And Arpad Vass, unfortunately, can recognize the smell of a decomposing human because he's been at it for, well, 10 years plus the time that he was in the body farm itself. So what happened in this case, and it sort of went under the radar, is that Dr. Vass was actually allowed to testify in what we call pure opinion form, that based on his experience, this smell was from a deceased, decomposing human being. That's never happened before. And I have kudos for Jeff for engineering this thing this way. That has never happened anywhere before. And you don't hear anybody talking about that. But that happened in this case. And Dr. Vass is now going on in his studies, of course, and I think it's an important advancement. And I'm pleased to say that I convinced Dr. Vass to name this process. And he did, with my suggestion. He didn't do it in the trial, but he subsequently issued another paper on it, and he called it what I suggested. We now have the fourth mortis, odor mortis. Now, as a juror, that's something you're going to grab a hold of. Because we're all about, I tell my students the trial of a serious case is grand theater. It's got very little to do with the law, the rules of evidence, and the rules of court. It's grand theater, and if you lose sight of that, you're going to lose your case. And that's what you're doing when you're presenting that stuff. So that allusion earlier to actors is not a mistake. It's real. You're doing it to convince these people and give them something that they can remember. And testimony like Dr. Vass's is significant. And, well, that's my function. And I'll answer any questions later on. Thank you.
Again, thank you to the panel and thank you to the Georgia Aquarium.
Thank you so much for joining us this evening for our Science on Tap series here at Georgia Aquarium, sponsored by Heineken. The series that you just watched is helping in supporting of our conservation research here at the aquarium, where our mission is to engage guests and better understand our ocean creatures and engage in better conservation research. We really appreciate your support this evening.